really ugly numbers this week. The Australian federal government's debt passed $1 trillion, and in the US it passed 40 trillion US dollars. Comparing that to GDP, it's about 33% of national income for Australia and a whopping 123% for the US. And what we're seeing here is bond market investors, people who lend the money to government, they're starting to get a little bit nervous and they're demanding more and more interest for holding these government bonds. So how did we get into this mess? Well, if you think about it, every year the government spends a certain amount of money, and if it doesn't raise enough taxes to cover that spending, the difference has to be borrowed. And every year they do this, that difference more or less gets added to this debt pile, which is starting to get a little bit uncomfortable, particularly in the USA. Which brings us to this week, and the US Treasury started buying 30-year bonds to try and bring the interest rate on them down. And they're saying this is for liquidity, to make it easier to buy and sell those bonds. But some investors are not so sure. And the reason is governments have an incentive to keep inflation a little bit hot when they've got lots of debt. The payments that they have to make on bonds are fixed amounts. So say a bond has to be repaid $100 in interest every year. That is fixed, but the amount of tax revenue they bring in usually comes from wages increasing or prices in the economy increasing. So they have an incentive to run those prices a little bit hotter than you and I might like as long-term investors. And I think that's why you've seen Bitcoin and gold have a really good run this week. Those are two assets that I don't particularly go near. I'm a long-term equities investor. So what can you do if you buy shares for the long term? Well, all you can really do is keep buying quality companies that can pass on costs to their customers, and companies that don't have a lot of debt and therefore are not paying a lot of interest expense each year. It's going to be really interesting the next few weeks to see if the US Treasury goes into that bond market again. It's definitely a story to watch for investors.